In Psalms 23, 1 Peter 5, 1 through 7, and John 21, we hear about shepherding. God's model of leadership is like shepherding. David knew this well in Psalms 23, and it changed the way that we view leadership. Jesus looked at Peter and says, "Feed my sheep, feed my lambs, take care of my sheep." And then later in 1 Peter 5, Peter calls us shepherds. He reminds us that Jesus is the chief shepherd. God's model of leadership is really close to being like a shepherd. Sheep are trusting and choose to follow, and as disciples, that's a challenge for us. And shepherds are caring and thinking through what their sheep need and what's best for them. David said about God's shepherding of him is that his rod and his staff, they comfort him. Rod and staff are two very different tools, but very significant tools. A rod brings more challenge and discipline and numbers and counting, and even used to break a lamb's or sheep's legs if they continue to be disobedient. It puts them on the shoulder and teaches them how to follow him and trust him fully. A staff gets sheep out of trouble, out of the bushes, a thicket. It guides them, brings them in close and tender. God does this. God still leads us like this. Holy Spirit is the great counselor, talks about fathering us and mothering us. Paul talks about and uses the same language, and when he begins leading within the Greek realm, he starts saying, "I fathered you" or "I mothered you," because this was the most significant way of explaining discipleship in the Greek culture outside of the Jewish world. So I'd like to present to you a tool called the Shepherd Matrix, and it helps you recognize how God leads you with the rod and the staff, and how you could lead your staff with the rod and the staff. This is a matrix. Matrices are significant tools to help us see how two things relate to each other. His rod and his staff, they comfort me. I would like for us to look at what is it like to have someone and a type of leader that's a little bit more rod-oriented, and one is a little bit more staff-oriented. This is typically the case for most of us. We've learned as we've matured to put them both together, and God's been forming our leadership. But what does it look like? For leaders who are a little bit more rod-oriented and don't provide the staff as much, it typically creates a stressed culture. This is mine. For a leader who provides more of the staff, bringing people in close, taking care of their needs, but not necessarily pursuing everything that they have, pushing the envelope, pushing towards clarity, high accountability, this typically creates a cozy culture. If someone is putting them both together like God does in his style of leadership, this creates an empowering culture. If neither are there, I would just call it blah, because why even be there and why does it exist? How are you as a leader? Imagine your staff, and what is it like to be underneath your leadership? Let's take a look at your leadership a bit further. Looking at the staff axis, the y-axis, you can go through and plot yourself. Where would you be? Would you put yourself as high or higher on this, or a little bit lower? For me personally, I would say I sit about here. It's not my natural bend. I'm typically trying to accomplish things myself. Then look at the x-axis, the rod axis, and place yourself. My staff would tell you I'm pretty high challenge, high pushing towards clarity, what's best, how can we do it better, and not as much celebrating. So I'd probably be there. So then you can plot yourself and recognize, there you are, in that stressed quadrant. This is what it's like to be underneath your leadership. Using the same way, you can find out and present this tool to your staff person and see where they're at. Do they prefer cozy? Well, it's going to be pretty hard for them to experience the rod as you provide high challenge, high accountability inside of support racing. Did you get 10 phone calls this week? If there's someone who's typically finds themselves in a stressed environment, they probably will not need more rod. They're probably going to need quality time with you reminding them of their identity and encouraging them. I hope this tool helps you lead your staff people better. So again, My rod and my staff, they comfort me. Or Peter says, you are God's shepherds or good shepherds following the chief shepherd in 1 Peter 5. Pursue this. I hope this helps.